Damn, that's hot to lean on.
It's pretty cool down here.
G'day, we're Fury Garage. I'm Jamie, that's Luke, and this is our Gen 1 5-litre Hilux that we built back in 2019 for probably under 5 grand.
Well under.
Well under.
All my 5 grand.
Pretty much, I didn't contribute anything.
Roll that intro, mate.
Perfect. Perfect. So Luke bought the car with a blown motor and the tray had been hit on a tree and completely ripped off the cab. So we started with how much did that motor cost? It was probably 4 cans of beer.
Oh, I gave Jake a 6-pack of JD for that first
6-pack of JD for a whole motor. So it was a Commodore 3.8, the Buick motor. They come in American Grand Prixes or something, and the Australian every Commodore ever made.
Yeah.
So we slapped that in. It already had the conversion kit and a blown motor of that same type in there already. After that, we moved across to the tray. And we put some new tray mounts on it. So these ones are ones that Luke's brother had laying around.
Yep. So they were donated for the build and just welded on. But yeah, the tray actually turned out being a lot more work than we thought, didn't it?
Probably took us a day on the tray alone.
Yeah.
The motor swap took less time than that. But
so you can't see it now, but the old mounts had actually twisted the chassis with them as they tore out of it. So that was a hell of a lot of work to get them out. But
yep, is what it is.
We got it made.
Anyway, we'll come around to the back. So once we got that new motor in, Luke drove it as his daily for, God, it'd be months, 3 months, something like that.
Yeah, so I drove it with the 3.8 in it for, it was probably a couple of months. And that was obviously leaf spring all around. Very capable truck, still twin locked. But I'm just loving coil springs in Hiluxes, so we had to swap it in.
And conveniently, he blew the motor just before we decided to pull the suspension out. So new motor in and then straight into the suspension. So if we come under here and have a look, Luke and his family are four-wheel drive nut jobs and a little bit of whiz, so he read someone's PhD article on how to 3-link and then adapted it into a Hilux.
Yeah, so I've done these before. I've done a 3-link before, done 4-link before in Hiluxes. They're a very simple and very effective suspension if you know how to put them together. The reason we use a 3-link in a Toyota truck or pickup or Hilux, whatever they call it, is obviously because of this right here, the big fuel tank. So I didn't want to have a fuel cell on the tray. I didn't want to buy another fuel cell that's going to work with a 4-link. I just wanted to keep the farm truck sort of look to the thing. So I put a 4-link in it. So I went super budget for it. So the lower arms are, I think they're straight out of a Toyota Land Cruiser. The upper arm was an old anti-hop bar, I think you guys call them in the state, with the leaf springs, so that's all chopped up. I used the bracketry for that as well. Inboarded the shocks, they're nothing special. The coil springs are a factory Toyota Land Cruiser unit.
D22 Navara hold downs for the...
So, yeah, it's probably worth a shot.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the coil retainers are just shackles out of a Navara that I got from work, out of the metal bin.
And the reason we ran them on this one was because the last Hilux we built, we didn't run them. We dropped the spring and then rolled the car shortly after. So I'll insert a shot here of...
Probably might have footage of that going around still.
No footage, sadly, but yeah, that was an interesting one. Anyway, so as you can tell, obviously the whole underneath of the car is quite budget. And I believe that all these brackets came from the same piece of steel that you did your first Hilux 3-link on as well.
That's right, yeah.
So we used one section of RHS style metal and made...
I think about 2 meters of this RHS, and it's done 2 3-links worth of bracketry now, and I still have it down in that shed, so it has more brackets to come out of it.
Now, all the way under here, you can actually see a cut-up Suzuki Sierra Panhard rod that we've used to fabricate plates that go on the top of the spring. So effectively, when the suspension cycles, the spring will drop away from the chassis.
The springs aren't actually attached to the top of the chassis at all. They're just on a, you can see the cone washer and a cutout in a top plate in the coil spring. So loosely located, and the coils swing down on these arms as the truck articulates and then comes back up and seats perfectly every time.
Yep, we've never had a problem with it. It's actually an amazing design.
It does work quite well. It allows the truck to travel like crazy.
Yep, we've... I do remember that we flexed it out on a flex ramp after the competition finished, and someone proclaimed that we would have won by a good metre if we had have actually competed, but...
We did.
a clutch master cylinder had foiled those plans. So
Yeah,
classic, this thing's just a beer rig.
it is.
All right, now one of the issues that we were having was we kept blowing up 3.8 motors. So I think we went through 3 and one of them didn't even last a full tank of fuel. Now the reason we swapped it to a 5 litre was we just got sick of replacing the 3.8s and they sound terrible anyway. So we absolutely had to put something decent in, and a 5 litre is cheap and reliable in inverted commas. But usually when people swap 5 litres, they throw the radiator on the tray, and we just couldn't have that. The lines of this car are too beautiful to go putting a radiator out the back and making it look terrible, and it was all too hard. So instead, Luke and I decided to fit it in the cab.
We've done almost a mid-engine.
Almost.
That's race car spec enough.
Yeah, so we just started cutting the firewall until the water pump cleared the radiator fan. And as you can see, the headers to the passenger footwell are quite close. I've melted a couple of boots on them. But it worked out really well. The last time we broke the car, we destroyed the tail shaft, and we were able to cut out exactly the right amount of damage on the tail shaft to fit the new auto in, because it went from a manual to an automatic with the V8.
So the new driveline went from a Toyota Hilux 5-speed with the twins on it, so it just had twin 2.28s. I put 4 7s in the rear case, so it's twins with 4 7s with the auto, so anyone who's had that knows it crawled amazingly.
Come, get up there. That way. Go that way, girl.
It's so handy. It's got a two-wheel drive cut on it as well, so it just makes for really nice drivability of an old truck. Turning circle absolutely sucks, so the two-wheel drive button is very handy to have. But yeah, as Jamie was saying, I twisted up probably about 200 mil of the old drive shaft, literally pretzeled it, and the extra length in the auto driveline was about 200 mil, so I just chopped out the twisted section, welded it back together, and it worked amazingly. So
Perfect.
I think it just adds to the essence of the budget of this thing, and just things just coming together with a bit more ingenuity, with just rather than just throwing money at it.
We just keep chopping it with scrap steel until it works.
And that Tawley you see in there, the VB Tawley.
It's the emergency fund.
We were drinking Tawleys one day and we just clipped one into a fire extinguisher mount, and it just fits so beautifully. So that one there has been, as you can imagine, this cab gets so hot inside, so that beer has been warmer than anything else on this truck.
It's a bit insane.
And one day we'll drink it.
One day.
My Bucks party maybe.
So if we have a look under the front, we've just got the usual Hilux get up, where it's got the rear leaf springs out of a Hilux on the front with some inverted shocks, are they?
No, so it's just additional shock towers. There's additional bump stops in there. The front of these things are really, really simple to get working travel-wise. So yeah, as Jamie said, factory rear spring straight up front. It does give you a little bit more on the approach angle as well, because I think it pushes your wheelbase out 2 inches in the front, 50 mil. Simple set of hangers, and they work really well. So they're a 12-inch shock, and it uses every bit of it.
Absolutely, it does.
So I've run this setup in 3 or 4 trucks so far, one being a Patrol, the other one being another Hilux, my white Hilux, and this. So this is number 4 for this setup, and it's never failed me. It's always worked really, really well.
Now, onto the pizza resistance. We've got the 5 litre. So as you can imagine, Luke picked this up for, was it $400 for motor and transmission?
Yeah, so the motor in the box was $400 in terrible condition. I picked it up off a little property down in central New South Wales while I was contracting down south. Managed to cram it all in the back of my ute
Pretty fun.
and drive up with it, and it just looked like an old dog turd pretty much.
Yeah, it was pretty bad.
So because I was contracting away down south, Jamie put in a lot of the legwork on this, cleaning parts, scuffing them back, painting up. So everything that looks good, put that down to Jamie, except for the metalwork and the
Yeah, look, I'm not the best on a grinder.
metalwork's all mine.
I know a bloke with a CNC wrist, so it's all good. But once we decided we were going to throw this in, I think we set our sights for an event called Winter Wheel, and that was 3 weeks away. Now, 3 weeks sounds like a long time, but as Luke said, he was off contracting, and I had my own things doing during the day, so we effectively had 3 weekends to work on it. So Luke would get home on a Friday night, and we'd start wrenching at like 6 p.m.
And that was, keep in mind, that 3 weekends started with a blown up V6 in the truck. So the first weekend was ripping out the old motor. We didn't do the suspension in those 3 weeks, did we?
We had to piece it back together because we broke it a second
That's
time.
right. So that's a broken 3-link and a busted 3.8 in the front. And in 3 weekends, we had this to a running, beautiful looking 5 litre. We had a new auto in it. We had twins, we had reduction. We had a new redesigned 3-link on coil springs in 3 weekends with no weekday work on it.
None at all. And those weekends were big weekends. I think over that, it's effectively a 7-day period. We probably put in like 120 to 150 hours each. So that's, you know, do the maths. It's like, that's a lot of hours to cram in over weekends. So it was a great time. But the results speak for themselves. The truck performs incredibly. Like, we couldn't ask for anything more.
No.
And it's so reliable. Like, it's been sitting for what, 12 months. We put fuel in it, cranked it, and it was fine.
Yep.
But some of the aspects you can see in the engine bay. So obviously it's got the 5 litre.
The iron line.
And there's quite a good bit of clearance to the firewall. It's only a fuel line buffeting the whole thing, so that's fine. We've got solid engine mounts down here because we ran out of time to put in some bushed ones. And then over on the side, we've got our solution to the steering issue. So that's a power steering pump out of a Holden Astra. And although we're not entered into the bracketry department, you got to love the bracket, using factory Toyota pickup points and factory Holden pickup point as well. So it's a nice little bit of bracketry. But yeah, ran some hydraulic lines, which cost almost as much as the whole damn motor to get it all to connect up. And yeah, the steering works great. Other than that, got a bit of Morton Island timber to hold the battery in. That's a beautiful piece of history. And yeah, the main reason we did it this way was to clear the fan. So if you look down into the engine bay there.
So that was one of the main dramas when I was building this thing, is because I wanted to keep a front radiator. I wanted to not chop as much of the firewall out as I could, and I wanted to keep the external lines of the car as nice as they were in 1982. So it was just a shitload of cutting. We had this engine out probably 6 or 7 times because I didn't want just have a hideous hole in the firewall. I wanted to follow all the lines of the engine. And yeah, the result speaks for itself. I think it looks really good for what it is.
Yeah, it was a lot of work, but it was definitely worth it. In the future, hopefully we'll put in a firewall, but probably not. We'll just wear Hawaiian shirts and go driving in winter. It's the easiest solution.
It's the only solution.
The only solution.
As long as the beer's cold, we're fine.
Beer's always cold when we're wheeling. All right, I'm Jamie. This is Luke. We're Fury Garage. Thanks for watching, and catch you later. See you.
The greatest things about them Gem 1s, give me a goddamn cold beer.